Good morning. And may I, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, warmly welcome the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Works and Transport, the Point Leases Industrial Port Development Corporation Limited, PLIPDECO, members of the media, as well as members of the public. First of all, may I advise that the meeting today is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic at our email address, which is parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, or Twitter @ttparliament. May I also advise all our officials who are here today from the very outset that the purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Point Leases Port Development Corporation Limited, PLIPDECO, for the period 2008 to 2015. The committee is desirous of hearing, which is our committee, from the key stakeholders at PLIPDECO to learn of the challenges being faced and determine some of the possible solutions and measures to overcome these challenges. May I emphasize that the role of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to help. May I repeat? The role of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to help PLIPDECO improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. At this time, I would like to introduce members of our committee. And I will start, and when we are through with our introductions, we will then invite officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, to be followed by the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the Point Leases Port Development Corporation Limited, PLIPDECO, to introduce themselves. So I can start on my extreme right in terms of introduction of our committee members.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Bitties-Primus, member of this committee.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Small. I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, all. Foster Cummings, member of the committee.
Morning again. Wade Mark, chairman of the committee. So we can now go to the Investments Division.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mr. Suresh Dan, Senior Business Analyst, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Hussein. I'm Senior Audit Analyst of the Investment Division, Ministry of Finance.
Ministry of Works and Transport.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dahanmati Ramdat, representing Ministry of Works and Transport as the Acting Permanent Secretary.
Good morning, Marissa Chattergoon, Auditor 3.
Good morning, everyone. Sonia Francis Yearwood, Chief Planning Officer, Ministry of Works and Transport.
PLIPDECO, may we start with the chairman.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ian Atherley, Chairman of PLIPDECO.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Taylor, President of PLIPDECO.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nigel Subaya, Vice President, Business Services.
Good morning, everyone. Merle Dennis, Manager, Legal Services.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Harold Rapier, Vice President, Port Operations.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Phillip. I'm the Corporate Secretary of PLIPDECO.
Thank you and welcome once again. May I, on behalf of this committee, invite Mr. Ian Atherley, Chairman of PLIPDECO, to make a brief opening statement on PLIPDECO at this time. So you're welcome to do so, Mr. Atherley.
Thank you very much. Good morning to the Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. I am Ian Atherley, Chairman of Point Lisa's Industrial Port Development Corporation. The other members of the PLIPDECO team present here today, we have just met. Mr. Chairman and members, on September 16th, 2016, PLIPDECO celebrated 50 years of existence. During this time, the story has been one of continuous improvement and development. For the 8-year period under review, 2008 to 2015, the corporation has registered a substantial list of accomplishments that span equipment acquisitions, infrastructural development, technology improvements, personnel development, and process improvements. Throughout this time, after adjusting for the effect of one-off transactions and payments, the corporation has also managed to progressively improve and maintain profitability despite of the challenges associated with port and estate operations and the prevailing economic and industry climate. Notwithstanding the current difficulties being faced by the country due to the slowing economy, we remain quite confident, Mr. Chairman, in the stability of the corporation and look forward to the opportunities that lie ahead. It is indeed a privilege to be here before the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, and our team looks forward to providing you with the answers to the questions posed by the members of the committee. I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And may I begin our inquiry today by addressing the Investments Division. Now, according to what is called the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, the Investments Division is responsible for executing the investment policy as prescribed by Cabinet. Accordingly, the mandate of the division includes oversight, monitoring, and where necessary, the rationalization of the government of Trinidad and Tobago equity holdings in commercial enterprises. The division acts on behalf of the Minister of Finance, corporation sold, and carries out the corporate function. This includes representation of the minister at shareholders' meetings, the establishment of new enterprises, and rationalization of the investments portfolio of the shareholder. May I ask the investment division representatives here this morning for clarification, not only for us, but for all the officials here and for the public. What is the role of the investment division in ensuring oversight and accountability in such a state entity as PLIPDECO? And you can even widen it if you wish to deal with the state enterprise sector. Whoever wished to respond, we would welcome.
Good morning again, everyone. Mr. Chairman, through you. The State Enterprise, the Ministry of Finance Investments Division is the division responsible for assisting the corporation soul, which is the Minister of Finance, in the monitoring and evaluation of the state entities. Usually, our method of monitoring is through certain reports, reported from the state entities. According to the manual, at page 33, we have a list of, we have a list of reports that are usually submitted by the state entities, and we have the relevant timelines. Based on our records at the Investments Division, PLIPDECO has been submitting their reports on a timely basis, and they are fairly up to date. For example, the annual financial statements were submitted for the financial year ending December 31st, 2015, and that was also submitted to the Parliament according to the rules and regulations. They held their annual meeting on June 16, 2016, for the acceptance of the said financial statements for the close of financial year December 31st, 2015. The board minutes have been submitted to us on a timely manner. Those that were approved by the board. They have been submitting a monthly, quarterly status on loans and overdraft portfolios. Those have been submitted up to 30th of September 2016. They have also been submitting a monthly statements of cash operations, and that also has been submitted up to 30th November 2016. So based on those reports, we would, if they were not compliant, in other words, then we would be normally writing to them, trying to extract the information so that we would be aware of what is happening at the PLIPDECO division.
So would you therefore say that PLIPDECO is one of the enterprises that has been adhering to the basic guidelines established by this particular booklet called State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual?
Yes, I agree, sir.
Okay. Yes.
Kindly, Chairman. Mr. Suresh Dan, yes, good morning again. If what you have just told the committee is true and correct, why are we contemplating financial statements dating back to 2008?
I am unable to provide an answer to that, madam.
What the honorable member is asking is, and maybe you can clear it up, whether, for instance, these financial audited accounts were submitted on time to the Parliament. Well, first of all, to the Ministry, to the Minister of Finance, then to the Parliament, and once it reaches here, we would receive them. The question is being asked, could you clarify whether all those reports spanning 2008 to maybe 2014 were submitted on time to the Ministry of Finance from PLIPDECO? Or if you can't answer, maybe I can ask the chairman of PLIPDECO to answer whether financial audited accounts, balance sheets, profit and loss account statements were duly in accordance with the law, that is the Companies Act, and the guidelines, were they submitted on time to the Ministry of Finance and through the minister? So you could answer Mr. Das, and maybe Mr. Attlee can follow.
From our records at the Investments Division, they were submitted on time.
Mr. Chairman, then it begs the question, because I'm quite sure members of the public, we at the level of this committee here, it's a perennial problem we have to be addressing. If in fact we are being told that PLIPDECO submitted their audited financial statements on time, why then is the Parliament in 2016, 8 years later, we are now addressing it? Something has to be wrong somewhere in the process. So if PLIPDECO submitted it on time to the Ministry of Finance, I assume it would be to the Investment Division, then if it is received at the Investment Division, there must be a credible reason why Parliament is addressing it 8 years later. That is totally unacceptable.
Maybe Mr. Attlee can help us from your memory, seeing that you have been there for a few years. Maybe you can tell us whether you recalled PLIPDECO submitting its financial statements, audited statements, to the Ministry of Finance beyond the stipulated 4 months after the completion of the financial year. For example, 2008, 2009, because we are now dealing with them. And we had a parliament for 2010 to 2015, and there was a Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. So we are just seeking clarification on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My knowledge is that we have submitted all accounts on time as is specified in the performance manual to date up to 2015. We continue to be compliant in all areas, sir, and it was to my surprise as well, in respect to the honorable member's question just now, why we were going back to 2008. I joined the committee November, the corporation, November of 2011, and it was up to date then, and we continued until the end of 2015 to be fully compliant.
Okay. Well, what we'll have to do as a committee is do some further inquiries as to where we went wrong in this area, because clearly and so on, these things are now before us, and we'll have to do some inquiries, because you are confirming as chairman from 2011 to the current time that when you arrived, PLIPDECO was up to speed, up to date with all previous reports. And since you have been there, you have been honoring and complying with the commitments of the Companies Act as well as the guidelines. And that is being confirmed by Mr. Das as well. So we will have to do some further inquiries. So let's move on, please. I would like to again raise the following questions. Now, the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual on page 8 states that the Ministry of Finance and the Line Ministry collaborate in respect of, 1, communicating policy issues affecting state enterprises and ensuring compliance, reviewing strategic plans and annual budgets, ensuring consistency between the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago macroeconomic policies and plans of the enterprises, and providing updated information on the composition of the boards of directors, including dates of appointment and termination of members. So I therefore direct this question to the Ministry of Works and Transport. What is the role of the Ministry of Works and Transport in assessing the effectiveness of the internal audit function of PLIPDECO? That's the first question. Second question, so you may write and respond. The second question, how has the internal auditing activity contributed to improving value for money and control processes of the company over the period under review? And the final question I'd like to put to the Ministry of Works and Transport: is the internal audit unit sufficiently staffed to meet the needs of the company? These are some important areas of concern that we would like to have clarified via the Ministry of Works and Transport on the internal auditing function.
Thank you, Chair and members. I only assumed in December of 2016. So I am now in the process of going through the annual statements, financial statements, strategic plans, to ensure that the state enterprises and companies that falls under the purview of Ministry of Works and Transport complies with the performance, the guidelines and performance monitoring manual. At this time, I can only say that PLIPDECO is one of our shining star right now among all the state entities that falls under the purview of Ministry of Works and Transport. I did not see any issues with the internal auditing, as well as the PLIPDECO do engage a company to audit their financials, and they submit, and I haven't seen any issues with it yet. Further, the internal audit, the question on whether the internal audit in the ministry is equipped, they are not, to answer you. We are now trying to ensure that they are equipped to assess risk management. That is one of the weaknesses in our internal controls within the internal audit and Ministry of Works and Transport at this time.
Seeing that you are new and you are speculating in many respects, we would have to write to you so that you can submit to this committee in writing the areas that we have just raised with you. And as you rightly said, because of the fact that you're new to the portfolio, you don't have all the facts before you. So we will write to you on this matter. Maybe I can ask the chairman of PLIPDECO, do you have an established audit committee of your board? And can you tell us the composition of that committee? And how has this audit committee of the board been functioning?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do, and the audit committee is one of the committees, or is that committee of our board that has us very proud. It has made us proud. The chairman is Prakash Ramnarayan, director, and they meet very often as required. And of course, the information is brought to the board for processing, for approvals, and that sort of thing. So yes, we do function effectively in that area.
Could you tell us what is the composition? How many members make up that board? What the names of those members, the offices that they occupy? And could you provide us with a copy of the last 2 or 3 reports of this committee?
Mr. Chairman, as I said before, Prakash Ramnarayan is the chairperson of that committee. Ibn De Leon, member, and Dr. Dale Suku, the 3rd board member.
Okay. What De Leon?
IBN Ibn Lama De Leon.
Yes, you got it.
Thank you kindly, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the composition is a 3-person composition. These members of the board who sit on the audit committee, do they sit on any other committee of the board?
Yes, they do, member.
May I follow up by asking you, apart from these directors who sit on the committee, 3 members you mentioned, right? Or 3 directors and who function otherwise. Do you have independent company professionals who sit on the audit committee of PLIPDECO board? Independent company professionals in accordance with the manual. May I refer you to page 11, Mr. Chairman and team? Let me tell you what page 11 says. Page 11 of this manual says, every state enterprise is required to appoint an audit committee. It shall be composed of a minimum, it could be more, but a minimum of 2 non-executive directors and other independent company professionals. That is in the manual. So I'm asking, could you tell us, apart from these 3 directors, do you have any independent company professionals sitting on that body? And do you have an internal audit charter that guides the work of that body? And if you do, can you make that charter available to this committee?
Yes, we do have the charter, Mr. Chairman, and the 2 other members that sit on the committee is actually 4. The president, Ashley Taylor, our manager of internal audit, Ms. Man Warren, and Nigel Subaya, who is present here with us, and the corps secretary on my left. And of course, internal auditors, external auditors from Price Waterhouse. They come in from time to time.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, the role of the audit committee is to guide and do compliance and oversight in the company. I just want to be clear that the line of communication between the internal auditor and the chairman of the audit committee is open. That is actually key to having a properly functioning audit committee of the board, that the manager of internal audit does not necessarily have, in fact, should not be reporting issues directly to his line. It should be reporting to the chairman of the audit committee, who can action whatever needs to be. I just want to be clear that that is the actual process at PLIPDECO.
My understanding is that is the process, sir.
Questions before I turn you over to another member. I'm looking at your total staff costs in terms of salaries, wages, and benefits over the period 2014 to 2015. I have observed that your wages and salaries and benefits stood at approximately 147,535,000 at the end of 2014. And at the end of 2015 financial year, it went to 156,024,000. First of all, I'd like you to explain to us what is the number of permanent employees that you have engaged at PLIPDECO, the number of contract employees that you have at PLIPDECO, and the number of temporary employees that you have at PLIPDECO. The second point I'd like to raise, how often are wage negotiations conducted? I think you said that in your submission, the current wage negotiation, or collective agreement, pardon, I beg your pardon, will be completed at the end of this year, 2017. So it's every three years, I would imagine. And could you bring us up to date with the outcome of the last negotiations? And what are some of the benefits offered to your permanent employees that you would like to share with us? You'll follow. Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the President, Ashley Taylor, will answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The overall staff count of PLIPDECO, including permanent and casual staff, is approximately 1,000 employees. And of that, we have approximately 400 permanent staff and approximately 600 casual employees. Casual meaning that these workers are utilized on an as-needed basis. As far as the wage negotiations are concerned, we are actually up to date with our negotiations with the majority union, the SWWTU. And in fact, the current collective bargaining agreement for one expires in November 2017, and other one expires in July 2018. So we are actually up to date with those negotiations.
Now, before I ask my colleagues to join me, so you don't have any contract employees on your establishment, because you use the word casual.
Chairman, I don't have an exact number, but I would believe that the contract employees would number less than 10.
Contract employees?
Yes.
How do casual graduate from casual to a permanent worker, or do they remain permanent casualties?
Okay, so within the collective bargaining agreement, there's what you call an establishment in terms of how many crane operators there should be, how many equipment operators there should be, how many stevedores, how many foremen, and so on. And this establishment would basically consist of what we call the permanent pool of workers. You'll have a casual pool consisting of this same type of workers, and who would support on an as-required basis whenever there's a shortfall based on the demands of vessel operations. So in a case where an employee, permanent employee from the establishment, in the case where he leaves a job, whether he's retired or whatever, we'd make a determination from the casual pool based on longevity of service, based on performance, and based on his skill.
Would you be able to share with us, I mean, maybe Mr. Chairman could advise or your good self, what was the establishment like? That is your both permanent workforce and your casual labor force. It's 1,000 now as we speak. What was it like 5 years ago?
There really hasn't been much change.
So you have
Chairman.
had a permanent establishment around that number
More or less,
for the
yes.
last few years?
More or less, Chairman.
And may I ask also, when you talk about an efficient port competing in a very dynamic global environment, with the opening of the Panama Canal as an example, trying to get more trade and opportunities, how does this port compare with other ports in terms of that, let's say, workforce? Do you think that, for instance, 400 is a very reasonable number, or it should be 500, or it should be 300, given, for instance, your state of play as a port that is seeking to be very competitive and to attract as much business as possible? How do you compare your level of efficiency with other ports that we have to compete with, particularly with the recent expansion of the Panama Canal?
Mr. Chairman, as far as ports go, we would be considered as a small to medium port, because when you look at other regional ports, for example, Jamaica, with throughput in close to 2 million TEUs, our annual throughput is just over 200,000 TEUs. So we are a relatively small port. In comparison to the smaller regional territories, the smaller regional ports, we are considered one of the more efficient ports. Yes, we still have some challenges, but overall, we are still considered to be fairly efficient. In fact, our market share for domestic cargo has grown significantly over the last few years, where in fact now we stand as the receiving, or should I say handling, the majority of domestic cargo, that is import-export cargo that comes through Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, we handle now about 55% of Trinidad and Tobago's domestic cargo.
Well, we haven't had sight of your strategic plan, and maybe you may wish to provide us with a copy. But as we do not have sight of it, we are constrained somewhat. In those circumstances, you may wish to share with us what is the ambition, what is the goal of PLIPDECO as it relates to the future re-expansion of your operations, so your throughput could be increased given the size, medium to small port, given the kind of possibilities that await us internationally and globally, given the expansion of the Panama Canal as an example. How is PLIPDECO strategically positioning itself to expand its operations, to attract more goods, more opportunities, so that you can become more profitable and more viable, and where you can expand overall your operation? Because in these times of economic difficulties, revenues are very critical. And therefore, we would like to know, in your strategic plan for the next 5 years, because, you know, plans are no longer set for 2 years and 3 years. Plans are set for 15 years, and they are reviewed periodically, long-term planning. So what I'm asking you on behalf of the committee, what are the plans on a medium to long-term basis for the expansion of the port of PLIPDECO? That is what I'm trying to get.
So, Chairman, I would start off by saying that the vision of PLIPDECO is to be a global leader in port and industrial estate management by consistently providing superior innovative services. So that's our vision. And consistent with that vision, we have been moving away from just being seen as a port and more seeing ourselves as what we call a logistics services provider, which encompasses port operations as well. So our view, our vision really is to not only expand the port operations, but also to provide services around or associated with port operations. So in fact, this year, we'll be embarking upon establishing warehousing, managed warehousing to facilitate logistics management, and therefore to work hand in hand with the port expansion. So we'll be able to garner not only local business, but also regional and international business as well.
All right, I'll ask my colleague, the Honorable Jennifer Batiste, Primus, or my brother, David Small, and then to follow by Foster, before I return.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had asked her to jump in a little bit on the questions you were raising about the staff. And Mr. Taylor has just completed some issues at an area regarding the operations of the port. I have quite a few inquiries on that. But let me just deal with the issue of I need to understand the situation of the casual workers. My concern is this. I understand that the port's needs vary. Through the chairman, I would like for the committee to understand the length of service profile of the casual pool. Because what I'm thinking about, you may have people working as casual employees for 10 years or more, and then their ability to plan their own lives, might be difficult. It doesn't mean that the company has to hire everyone, but we don't have a feel. And so I'm requesting that information. You don't have to respond on it right now, but we would like to understand what is the length of service profile of your casual pool, so we could understand if you have workers, somebody working 20 years on casual, something I can't do anything with it until I have the data. But arising from that, I looked at your accounts, and you have an interesting item here called Casual Employee Retirement Benefit. Now, it's linked to my earlier point, because I would like to understand the genesis of this, because if you have a casual worker, I'm not understanding the retirement benefit. So what I would like to understand is structure, the thinking, and then ideally if you're paying a retirement benefit, I would have thought that would be paid to a permanent worker. But I don't know the structure, and it's a fairly significant, I won't put the number in the public domain, but it's a significant number, and I'm seeing it's growing. It's not a static number. So if the casual pool is staying relatively stable, but the number is growing, so there's, for me, some disconnect. So I want to understand, how did this arise? I'm not sure if this has been, I didn't notice this in the older accounts. I think this is a fairly recent addition to your cost profile. So what led to this? And then why, I just need information to understand why the company is going along this route, and then why is it growing if your casual pool is not really changing.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Member, Mr. Chairman, the purpose of the retirement benefit was specifically for the casual workers, and it was put into place because it was found that the number of the casual employees who would have reached the age of retirement left the corporation with next to nothing. So the corporation took a decision to put in place this fund. So to basically put these employees in a much better financial position than they would have normally been in the past. So the permanent employees would have the pension, and the casual workers would have the terminal benefit.
I will give it to the Honorable.
Thank you, colleague, member. Mr. President, I find that a strange concoction from an industrial relations point of view? Why create a retirement fund for your casual workers and don't make them part of your permanent staff? Because if they are with your organization 5, 10 years, it's a clear indication that the services that they provide is critical to the organization. Why have your permanent employees to whom you will have to pay pension and have a casual workforce who becomes eligible for the payment of a pension? Explain that. I have never heard about that kind of situation before, and I have been involved in the arena for about 40 years. Could you explain?
Okay, so member, the reason is the demand of the working demand on the port is cyclical in nature. So there are times when there might be a demand for 50 workers, and there may be a time when there may be a demand for 150 workers, depending on the number of vessels in port and so on. It would be extremely difficult from a financial point of view to be able to facilitate having all 1,000 of these, or should I say the additional 600 of these casual workers on the permanent staff, and still be able to maintain the profitability of the corporation.
What is the cost in operating the fund? And how much pension? Is it a monthly pension? The casual workers who would have attained retirement age. Am I to assume the retirement age that is under reference is 60 years? So that is it a monthly pension that is paid to these casual workers? And what is the cost of operating this retirement fund to the organization? What is the annual cost of operating this fund?
I'd like to defer the answer to that question to my Vice President, Business Services.
Hi, good morning all. It's the structure of the fund. It's a one-time payment upon retirement of the casual employee. The payment is made based on a formula that is set in the collective agreement. It's the severance formula in collective agreement based on the employee's years of service. The salary that the person would have earned at the end as well. Qualifying criteria will be based on the amount of hours that the employee works for the year. So the employee doesn't have to work for the whole year. We prorate the amount of payment in accordance. So the annual operating cost of the fund is nil. What you see is the actual value of the payments outstanding at this point in time that is done by the evaluators. So the only payments that we actually make on a year-on-year basis is when an employee actually retires. And we make a payment based on that.
I just, if I might, are we being advised or informed that someone can get into the labor force of PLIPDECO at the age of 20, as an example, and because of the nature of your operations, this individual can work from the age of 20 to the age of 60 on a casual basis, or the person, let's say, if you want to be generous, he comes in at the age of 40, and that person can work as a casual worker until the age of 60. And you are saying that you have hundreds of workers who may be in that catchment area, and they're just graduating every year until they reach the age of 60. And you're saying that there's a formula in a collective agreement that would provide for a kind of enhanced severance payment so that the worker, when he leaves at the age of 60, may get, I don't know if it's $100,000 minus taxes, or whether he will get $100,000 before taxation. I think that this committee needs to be provided with some more information, detailed information, so that we can have an understanding, because our business is not the permanent exploitation of any category or group of workers in the country. And we would hate to know that a state enterprise that is 51% owned by the state is engaged in some form of activity that when we examine, we find it unacceptable. And we will therefore have to recommend to the Parliament that this particular practice ought to be reviewed or discontinued. But we need to have the facts before us. So we don't want to detain you unnecessarily, but if you can provide to this committee some details on this particular provision, because as my friend said, I saw the figure myself and I was a bit startled in terms of the annual figure that you have to pay to these casual workers upon their retirement. And I think that we need to probably get from you how this thing is done, how many people are involved, and as the honorable member asked, that is Mr. Jennifer Baptiste Primus, you know, do we have people coming in on a casual basis and they just working their way because they now have entrenched in their minds that they will never become permanent, and therefore they are almost resigned to a life of casual labor. And then at the end of the day, they are given a little something at the end of the day, a little whatever amount, I do not know what it is based on. You said it's a formula, we haven't seen it. But please, please, we wouldn't want to detain you unnecessarily on this one, because there are many, many other areas that we want to address, but we would like you to submit to this committee a detailed analysis of this particular arrangement, how long it has been in existence, and how many workers are affected, have been affected, how much money you have paid out since it came into operation, into existence, and maybe the company may wish to posit recommendations for our consideration to make this thing a little more acceptable. I am hoping that we are not in violation of any of our collective and international obligations in that regard. But that is a matter we will deal with as we go on. I think Mr. Small would like to raise something, and then I go back to the honorable member.
Well, I don't.
Yeah, you are there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to say, in my own respectful view, I believe the company has tried to fix a situation where you have a worker on, and you don't want them to just be away from the company, having to, because it's actually an oxymoron to say someone is a casual worker is retired. You can't, as a casual worker, casual workers can't retire because by the nature they're casual. I think the company has tried to do something, but I think in doing what you have done, my respectful initial view is that you're treating with not with the cause, you're treating with the symptom. The symptom of what is going on, how the company manages the issue is to organize to make a payment, but you're not treating with the cause. And perhaps that is where we need to train our minds on. So, Mr. Chairman, and just to refresh, through the chairman, I would like to make sure that as part of the information package on this issue, we provide to us, you have X amount of casual workers, what is the length of service profile? So I want to know how many workers have been working over 20 years, 15 to 20 years, so we can get an idea after what we're dealing with, because I'm starting to get a little antsy about it. But let me move on. I am now want to move topic completely, Mr. President, and I want to talk about the performance of the company. I have looked at your submission, and you indicated that you have some priority projects. So I would like to understand, in particular, you have an expansion of your port facilities. I would like to know what is the scope of this work. I would like to understand how is this being financed, which is a critical issue given the current situation. And then the rationale for doing this to begin with, is this tied to some kind of forecast for increased vessel traffic? From the information we have here, it was difficult to get that. So I need to understand three things. What is the rationale for doing it? What is the scope of this work? And how long it's going to take? And then how are you financing it or planning to finance it?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, members, the reason for the rationale for deciding to expand the port operations is twofold. One is to increase the flexibility of the port in terms of the size of vessels that could be accommodated, and therefore expanding the potential base of customers. And the second reason is that the port has an estimated capacity of 250,000 TEUs. And up until 2015, we were rapidly approaching that capacity. So in 2015, we actually had 2 consecutive years of record throughput. In 2014, we had a throughput of 208,000 TEUs, which was a record. And then in 2015, we had a further improvement again, where we had 221,000 TEUs. So based on that, and also as the chairman had also mentioned, the phenomena of the Panama Canal would eventually have an impact on regional trade. It wouldn't happen immediately, but there would ultimately be an impact. So that was the rationale for contemplating the expansion. The scope of the expansion is determined that it will be done on a phased basis, as opposed to doing a full-fledged expansion all at the same time. Because, as you know, that once you invest that money, it will have to be paid back based on the volumes, the port volumes that you receive. So the intention was that it would be done on a phased basis initially, probably estimated going initially another 150 meters with our largest berth. And then when they reach close to capacity once more, then we embark on another phase of the expansion. I think going forward, we probably have to rethink the timing of the expansion, because last year would have been a particularly challenging year, because there was a substantial decrease in our overall throughput, consistent with the prevailing economic climate in Trinidad and Tobago and the prevailing economic climate regionally, where we saw a substantial drop in our overall throughput. So even though the expansion would probably still be on the cards, we probably have to rethink the overall timing of that expansion program. In terms of how we're going to finance the expansion, that has not yet been fully determined. It may be some combination of between debt and equity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. So that essentially this is a plan. You've looked at it, and given the change in economic circumstances in Trinidad and the region, you recognize that it may not be prudent to pursue this plan at this point in time. Okay, good. I just want to get one quick follow-up on you, and it has to do with the performance of the port. In your submission, you provided some information regarding the amount of TEUs coming through the port. But what the committee was really seeking is to understand how the port is performing. The TEUs is but one measure. That's just the volume of traffic. So I mean, we have the wonderful team at the Parliament here was able to trace an UNCTAD, Dr. a UN document for us which details a whole series of comparators about total time in port, the duration of ships in the port, the ship output measures. What we'd like is for the company, you don't have to necessarily respond today because this is difficult, but what we want to understand, how is the port compared to other ports in the region in terms of not only the amount of traffic coming through it, but efficiency and output measures. So through the chairman, the committee will be requesting for us to get a little more information that allows us to be able to make a determination as to how efficient the port is. Because the amount of volume traffic coming through it is not the best or single indicator. Because if it takes the berthing time is long, you have the operational time at the berth is too long as compared to other ports, then that means the port charge. There's a whole series of information presented to support this committee. And we found that based on what was submitted, we couldn't make a determination as to whether or not the port of Parliament is efficient or not. I'm sure this is information you guys have, so we will be requesting that. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Foster, comment?
Members of the board and executive of PLIPDECO. Now, in terms of the expansion, which was dealt with recently, are there any plans for the expansion in the area of real estate? Because the PLIPDECO is also the landlord for the estate, not so? Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and members, PLIPDECO for the industrial estate for a number of years has actually reached practical capacity. So there's not really much room now for expansion. What we are actually, our strategy going forward really is that as part of our overall plan for improving the logistics output of the corporation, any small parcels of land that would have become available, we have been retaining those small parcels for the construction of warehouses as part of our logistics developmental plan. As far as we are unable to do any large-scale industrial estate development at this time, as I said, because the 865 hectares that's allocated to us is really at practical capacity. There are areas to the north and areas to the west of us as well that are vested with other state agencies, but we are process that will need to be followed if we are required to get any of those parcels of land for additional industrial estate development. But as I said, as it stands right now, the current industrial estate is really at practical capacity.
I get that from your document submitted, so I guess the question I'm asking is whether, as part of your strategic plan, there's any intention to look towards outside of the 800 hectares, expanding northwards.
As far as expanding northwards, that may not be possible because I believe that there are plans on the way, I believe, for other ministries as far as development of that part of the estate is concerned. There are other areas adjoining the developed industrial estate that may be possible to be utilized, but it requires some investment to be able to develop that land so it could be utilized. In other words, remember that PLIPDECO itself was developed on reclaimed land. So additional areas adjoining will need to be reclaimed as well to ensure that those pieces of land are usable for further development.
That's it for now.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just tie up the loose end regarding the negotiations at PLIPDECO. What was the outcome, and the questions are directed to you, Mr. President. What was the outcome of the last two negotiations, And for what periods were they?
The last two negotiations with the majority union would have been for one bargaining unit, would have been for the period 2012 to 2015, and the other one for the period 2015 to 2018, and the other unit would have been for the period 2011 to 2014, and 2014 to 2017.
And the percentage?
Well, the percentage, I think we had a fairly novel approach as far as the final percentage payout. I think there was a guaranteed 9% for the last agreement, and a further 3%.
Mr. President, I like to take things in sequential order. So if we'll go back for the period 2012 to 2015,
Oh, I'm sorry.
what was the percentage agreed upon for that period?
For that period was 12%.
And for the period 2015 to 2018?
So there was 9% guaranteed, and a further 3% over the life of the bargaining agreement based on the company's performance. That is revenue growth.
So you're saying that the 3% was locked into, it was productivity bargaining?
Well, yes, it was tied to revenue growth of the corporation.
And for the period 2011 to 2014 for the other bargaining unit?
Would have been the same.
The same thing, in both instances?
Both instances, yes.
All right. I just want to shift the focus a little and to focus on the situation regarding the ArcelorMittal plant. With respect to the environmental pollution by ArcelorMittal, what is the status of this issue? I have knowledge that you all had taken ArcelorMittal to court. There were one or two court issues. What were the outcome of those court issues?
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members, the court judgment was delivered on that case July 27th last year. PLIPDECO basically won the judgment as far as costs are concerned and limited damages. And when I say limited damages, I think there were two aspects to the damages claim. One was the effect on our operating equipment, and the other aspect of it was the nuisance factor and the work stoppages as a result of the ArcelorMittal's operations. So we won on the latter aspect, and the judge did not find, as far as the former, that is respect to the effect on the equipment, the judge didn't find a sufficient case to justify. But basically, based on that, was really a kind of a hollow judgment to some extent, because as you would all know, Mittal would have ceased operations in March last year.
Well, that leads to my other question, whether or not you all were in a position to retrieve anything from ArcelorMittal via the costs awarded by the court.
Thus far, we have retrieved the costs.
And so what was or were the cost or costs?
1.9 million.
And ArcelorMittal have paid off that debt?
Yes, it was. Because I think when the judgment was delivered, the attorneys representing ArcelorMittal asked for a 28-day stay as far as the payment for the costs were concerned, and then we approached Mittal again based on what was promised at the court hearing, and that payment was subsequently made towards the end of last year.
Why did you all take so long to pursue legal action against ArcelorMittal for the perpetual breaches?
Again, it really, in developing the case, was really a substantial amount of information that would need to be collected, collated to ensure that it was an airtight case. I assumed the position of president of PLIPDECO in 2009, and almost immediately after discussions with our executive team, we commenced the process of putting together a case, putting information together, and bringing the issue before the courts.
Was medical attention provided for the employees of PLIPDECO with regards to the pollution created by ArcelorMittal?
Well,
Your employees, the employees of the organization.
Of PLIPDECO's employees?
Yes.
Well, we have had no documented cases whereby any health issues arose directly out of the pollution from ArcelorMittal.
As the owner of the estate, would you say that ArcelorMittal's plant is an environmental hazard?
I wouldn't say the plant is an environmental hazard. I would say that certain aspects of their operations created a hazard, which we requested of them on several instances to have it addressed.
ArcelorMittal has absconded and gone their way. There is a liquidator in place. Have you all at PLIPDECO had the plant, the land, the environment assessed for continued pollution and damage to human health?
Well, as it stands now, there is no operations going on with the plant, so there are no emissions.
Are you familiar with the term slag?
Yes, I am.
Isn't there a great amount of slag remaining on ArcelorMittal plant? On
Right.
The grounds?
So coming out of the court judgment, the learned judge at the time found no evidence to suggest that the standing slag piles had a direct impact on PLIPDECO's operations. But that being said, we have had a fairly good relationship with the current liquidators, and we have had the discussions with them with respect to the slag piles, and I think they have been working fairly diligently to have the slag pile reduced. And I know for a fact that a fair amount of the slag has actually been exported, and some of it has also been used locally as well for filling certain areas.
Mr. Chairman, I've asked the good member to give way because this is an issue that concerns me greatly. Slag is a byproduct of smelting. And out of smelting, the slag contains some really not so good things such as beryllium, chromium, cobalt, manganese, and lead. And this has been, and because of where the slag piles are located and the prevailing winds, I had the privilege of visiting your port 2 years ago, and on the day we visited, I almost thought I was in another place because the dust in the atmosphere was horrendous. The workers were walking around wearing dust masks and whatever else they could put to protect themselves. So I'm surprised at your revelation today that there have not been any issues raised by workers directly on this. But a slag pile is an environmental disaster. There's a treatment for slag piles that is used, something called it's a geomembrane tap, which is something that you effectively put over the slag pile to prevent the molecules from being dispersed in the atmosphere and ending up in your water courses. Okay, so that what I am trying to get at is, given that you said they've made some moves to reduce the amount of slag, but the last time I was in that area, there's still, probably the majority of it is still there. And it presents, in my respectful view, an environmental disaster waiting to happen. And to the extent that you are a company and you have employees working and breathing in chromium, beryllium, and because you need to have someone go in there, in my respectful view, go in there, do an analysis of what is in the slag and what is coming up, and did you have the EMA or someone go and do an air test, an air quality test? These are the things that I would have liked to hear from the company to say that, listen, we recognize slag is an issue. We have workers on the site. We've engaged this authority to do air quality testing, water quality testing, effluent testing to understand what impact, if any, this slag has had. And I am fairly confident that it might not be a good result. So I need to understand what has the company done proactively to understand, notwithstanding the fact that ArcelorMittal has absconded, according to my good colleague here. The fact is we remain with these slag piles. And before, my last addition on this, could you tell this committee, inside of your lease agreement, is there a term and condition for remediation of the site? That is so critical, because even though they have absconded, whoever is here should not be able to leave that site without fully remediating that site. That should not be a cost that comes back to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because they've put workers out of bread and butter, and I don't want them to be in a place where they can abscond from their legal responsibility under their terms of the contract to remediate the site. So I'd like your response on that, please. Thank you. And I thank you very much, member, for giving me.
Okay, I'll answer. So, Chairman and members, I would answer your last question first. Yes, there is a clause in there for remediation of the site. As far as the effect of the slag, you recall that I stated that the basis of the court case that we brought against Mittal was in respect of the slag pile and respect of the plant operations being the melt shop, as well as the vessel loading operations as well. Unfortunately, the judge, in handing down his judgment, I think found that the slag pile was, for want of a better word, was inert, and that the material from the slag piles would not be dispersed in such a way as to affect our operations. Our experience really has been different, and that's one of the reasons why we continue discussions with the liquidators as far as having that issue resolved.
Mr. President, I understand what the information shared regarding the view held by the learned judge, but that has to do with the equipment of the organization. Our questions are directed to the health of the workers, the employees of the organization. And if there is a clause with regards to remediation of the site, what is it and what action has your company taken to enforce this particular aspect of the clause?
As far as
this particular aspect of the agreement.
As far as the remediation of the site, you remember that the overall site is still in possession of ArcelorMittal in liquidation. So they're actually in the process now of either selling the assets and eventually remediating, or selling the assets as a going concern. So the issue of remediating the site overall would not come up unless or until Mittal, or if they eventually make a decision to abandon or leave the site or terminate the ongoing lease arrangement.
Mr. Chairman, we should ask, and I'm requesting that the company obtain the necessary qualified expert testing with regards to the health of the employees. My learned colleague has indicated clearly the the component aspect of the slag. And that ought to be of concern to all of us. And therefore, there are competent authorities in this country that can be called in to engage in the necessary assessment. I mean, one understand that the outcome of the court case presented what I would term a Pyrrhic victory, because really it's hollow because they've gone. But we have to ensure that not only the workers, but the citizenry in the immediate environment, because the impact on people's health may not reveal itself in the short term, but in the long term. And therefore, it does not, it creates a heavier, a greater responsibility on PLIPDECO to take this issue to the logical end.
May I endorse the view expressed by Mrs. Jennifer Baptiste Primus. And it may be necessary, in fact, I believe it is necessary for PLIPDECO, the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance to collaborate on this particular matter and to determine with some degree of urgency what action, measures, steps could be immediately taken to ensure that the health and safety, as well as the environment, the welfare of the workers in question, you have 1,000 of them, 400 permanent, 600 casual, and then you're talking about persons who would be indirectly affected, as Mrs. Baptiste Primus has alluded to, in terms of environmentally and in the outer spaces of PLIPDECO itself. We need to conduct some kind of arrangement
Environmental assessment.
to determine, for instance, what possible health risks this matter that we have been discussing pose to the workers in that area. So I think it's a duty on the part of PLIPDECO, the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the Investments Division to collaborate on this matter, because it might be much more than meets the ordinary eye. And as you know, these things tend to erupt, not immediately, but in the medium and long run. So that is a very important matter. So we'll be writing you officially on this matter. But we are asking you in the meantime to collaborate on this issue to try to find some solution. And maybe you can submit it to us as to the solution that you would have come up with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two other areas I would like to engage the team from PLIPDECO. I read where the organization developed a strategic plan for the period 2015 to 2017. May I be advised what was the process used in the development of the strat plan, and who were the providers engaged in this process?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, I don't recall immediately the name of the company. Right, the name of the company was Opus Limited, and they worked collaboratively with the executive management team in developing the strategic plan the plan would have been developed, presented to the Board of Directors. Board of Directors would have given their feedback, comments, and the plan was further adjusted and then approved by the board.
Were the employees involved in the development of the strategic plan?
Feedback would have been sought from the employees.
So one gathers that your strat plan was top-down?
Yes.
Not bottom-up?
No. I said feedback would have been obtained from employees in the development of the plan.
The strategic plan expires when in 2017?
It's for the whole of
So December
2017.
2017?
Yes.
What actions has PLIPDECO put in place to ensure that the strategic direction supports the strategic goals of the Ministry of Works and Transport?
Well, basically, we have not been given any direct feedback as far as the strategic goals and direction of the Ministry of Works and Transport. However, the Ministry of Works and Transport are regularly updated on the activities of the corporation through the submission of board minutes on a monthly basis, as well as financial information with respect to the corporation. So any changes, for example, that would occur with respect to the strategic plan will be updated and discussed in the board meetings and be minuted, and that information will be passed on to the Ministry of Works and Transport.
Based on the recommendations that would have been made within the strategic plan, how did you all go about converting the strategic plan into operational policies?
Right. So basically, in developing the plan, a number of various focus groups would have been developed. So from the specific strategic goal, then we develop objectives will be developed, and then from the objective, specific operational plans, which would come on the responsibility of the respective managers would then be developed. Managers will be required to report on the progress of their various plans on a monthly basis. In fact, we have weekly management meetings where managers are required to provide updates. On a monthly basis, they're required to provide an overall update as far as the plans are concerned, as well as financial status of the individual departments.
Do you all pay bonuses to your managers?
We pay bonuses to all members of staff.
What was the last bonus paid out?
Approximately, overall to the entire corporation, approximately $2 million.
And that $2 million would have covered how many persons in the organization?
Would have covered all employees. The bonus formula was changed in 2015 when the collective bargaining agreement was renegotiated.
At the level of the executive management, does this $2 million include the bonus paid at the level of executive management?
The formula for the payment of the bonuses is the same throughout the entire organization.
That's not what I asked you, Mr.
Well,
President.
it includes, yes.
All right. My final question, Mr. Chairman. How many shipping lines or agents and exporters or importers conduct business with PLIPDECO?
Approximately 10 shipping lines. As far as importers and exporters, I don't have an exact figure. It probably numbers over 150 or so. Don't have an exact number.
From time to time, and with increased regularity, you would hear the business sector complaining bitterly about challenges that they experience in the importation of their products and their materials. So I would want to know what systems are in place to ensure there is an effective service provided by the port to facilitate the kind of economic activity that is required within the challenging economic times that we are facing in this country. What are some of the systems that you all will implement for increased efficiency at the level of the port?
Okay, for example, we recently upgraded our terminal operating system to what we would call the best in class of its type. That was implemented in September of last year, and that would basically give enhanced access for shipping lines, agents, stakeholders. It will also enable the planning of vessel and yard operations on a more systematic basis. We have also embarked on what we call an express processing system for our larger customers, to the extent that customers, larger customers who, for example, bringing in 10 or more containers would not have to go through the process of having to clear each time one container individually, but basically these large customers would have been vetted, would be able to for example, clear these containers on a blanket type basis. In addition to that, with the recent implementation last year of what we call the safety of life at sea under the International Maritime Organization, whereby customers were required to provide the exact weight of the containers as a result of the safety concerns with vessels. We are actually in the process now of actually implementing an automated type system to make the process for truckers coming into the port to do operations, make that process as seamless as possible through an automated type system. So these are some of the measures that we've been putting in place.
Mr. Chairman, I crave your indulgence. I know I said final. This is the last. Mr. President, from time to time, the population learns via the media of various types of contraband material coming through the port at Point Lisa's, drugs, money. The range. What systems have you all put in place to detect the will of those who are determined to break the law in this country?
Right. So we have over the years, and then within recent times, we have been working a lot more closely with customs and excise to vet containers that are coming through the port, especially from certain territories. We on our own cannot make a decision to just take a container, put it aside, and examine it. It really has to come out of the directive of customs and excise. We have a security team that is trained who work generally very closely with customs. We have put some other measures in place to be able to ensure that documentation cannot be forged. You have put systems in place that persons who come to collect containers provide proper evidence that they are the correct persons to clear the containers. We are actually also been a CCTV system, over 180 cameras installed at the port as well, to be able to monitor and detect. And actually, we are also in the process now of changing some of our security procedures at the in and out gates, as well as implementing additional cameras as well to screen. We anticipate that based on the feedback from customs and excise, we anticipate that the implementation of the much-awaited container scanners would be finally implemented by the beginning of the first quarter of,
That's what I was waiting to
this
hear.
year. We have actually had the infrastructure in place to facilitate the scanners for the last year and a half. But again, we await on the feedback from customs to be able to start the process.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. I have a few questions on Mr. Foster and then my colleague, Mr. David Small. First of all, we would like you to provide us with a copy of the strategic plan of PLIPDECO. We will also like to have an organizational chart of that company's or the corporation. So please provide us with same. I want to go on to procurement. March the 31st has been set as the deadline by the government for the implementation, operationalization of the new Procurement and Public Disposal of Property Act in Trinidad and Tobago. It will cover close to about 240 to 250 entities, including ministries, statutory authorities, state enterprises, regional corporations, among others. In the case of PLIPDECO, could you tell us, either the chairman or the president, what is the state of play? What preparations are being made? What training are being conducted? What personnel are being engaged, consistent with the provision of the new legislation? Could you advise this committee the state of readiness of PLIPDECO to comply with the law when it is operationalized by March 31st, 2017?
We believe that based on the operational procedures that we employ, that we are fully equipped to be able to comply with those guidelines. We actually have a procurement policy in place for the last 2 decades, which has been working fairly well. We have the systems there. We have a continuous training program with our employees. We have what we call the enterprise systems, software systems in place to ensure as well that procurement is done efficiently, effectively, and accurately.
Have you been in contact with the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, for example, Ministry of Works and Transport, to guide you as to the kind of structure and personnel that would be required to give effect to the legislation? You may have had something in place for 2 decades. It may have worked very well. I have no doubt it has worked well based on what you have submitted. But there's a new law that is going to come on stream, which is going to be very, very stringent. And it is not as what you used to operate in the past. And this is why I'm asking you, first of all, whether you have familiarized yourself with the new law, whether you have worked or you are working very closely with the Works and Transport Ministry and the Investments Division, Ministry of Finance, to determine what are the requirements of the new law so that you would be compliant when it becomes operationalized in March of 2017. Not what you currently have. We have a clear appreciation of what you have. We deal with what is the law to come and the operationalization of that law.
We are familiar with the law to come. In fact, we have sent staff on specific training so that once the law is enacted, you would already be familiar and you'll be able to move swiftly to adjust the necessary procedures. And we have also been in contact with the Ministry of Finance as well in that regard.
As my colleague is reminding me, you'll have to establish a specialized unit for procurement in order to give effect to this law.
Yes.
Are you taking steps to get that in place?
Yes, we are.
Okay. We'll be monitoring PLIPDECO to that effect. May I also go on to ask the following? There's an item called trade and other payables. You're aware of that? That item?
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Now, I saw where in 2014, it was 28.5 million. And at the end of 2015, it rushed up to 43.6 million. Now, what is even more important to observe is that between the period 2014 to 2015, trade and other payables have increased by $15 million. Now, trade and other payables are obligations by PLIPDECO to pay for goods and services that have been acquired in the ordinary course of business from suppliers. Could you tell this committee what are the reasons for this extraordinary increase in trade payables in 1 year, 2014, 2015? You're owing suppliers. You increase by $15 million. So first of all, explain to us the reason for this extraordinary increase and what systems are being put in place to monitor this account so that we ensure that we don't we do not continue along the line that we are at the moment. Mr. President, maybe you can.
Mr. Chairman, I will ask my Vice President, Business Services, to provide some clarification on that.
Hi, good evening. Trade and other payables in 2014 versus 2015. The main reason for the difference was a timing difference. In 2014, we would have paid all the deductions, NIS health surcharge, credit union dues, credit union sports club dues, pension payments. We would have made those payments in the month of December. In 2015, those payments were made in January. That difference is actually $7 million, so that's actually a timing difference. In 2014 also, the company did not make any provisions for bonuses because we were below the threshold. And then the provision was made in 2015. So that would have accounted for the majority of the differences. 2015 also, we had a slight increase in the accruals for expenses as well as for utilities. That being said, in 2016, there's a substantial reduction. As you can see, up to September 2016, and even when we publish in 2016, you'll see a substantial reduction in that field, AP and accruals.
Should you be paying bonuses out of trade and other payables?
No, it's just this is the financials as of December. So the bonus payments are made after or around the time of the AGM, after the financials are approved by the board and by the shareholders. So we accrue it as at the end of December, and the payments are normally made May, June the following year.
Could you give us a detailed breakdown? Submit to us a detailed breakdown of the trade and other payables for 2014 and 2015, item and amounts. So we will have an appreciation. The other area, before my colleague Foster comes in, and then Mr. Small, I want to ask on the receivables, trade and other receivables. I have observed where in 2014, this was increased by $6.6 million. So people who are owing PLIPDECO, they are rising both in numbers and the volume in terms of value, I should say. So in 2014, it was 22.1 million. In 2015, it went up to 28.7 million, a difference of $6.6 million. Now, trade and receivable are amounts owed or due from customers for services performed by PLIPDECO in the ordinary course of your business. So this is monies that are owed to PLIPDECO, 22 million in 2014, rising to 28.7 million. So somebody getting a bad habit here, that they feel that they could get away in not paying their monies or whatever you are providing them, paying and honoring their commitment. So what I'm asking on behalf of this committee, explain this increase from 22 million to 28.7. The difference I have here is about 6.6 million. Explain this increase and tell us what systems are being put in place to monitor this account so that those delinquents who owe PLIPDECO would be able to meet their obligations to PLIPDECO. Okay. Could you explain to this committee?
Okay, I'll take this one. Right, so between 2014 and 2015, the actual trade receivables didn't vary much between the 2 years. What caused the difference is two major items: VAT refunds and amounts that is due from customs. That would have caused the increase in the amounts due. Now that being said, PLIPDECO has a advanced payment policy that we have been working along with our major customers to enforce, and that will see some fruition during the course of 2016.
You again, like trade and other payables, could you give us a detailed breakdown of the items or the persons or the organizations that are owing PLIPDECO in 2014, 22 million, and in 2015, inclusive of what you have indicated to us? We'd like to have clarification. My colleague, Mr. Foster Cummings, Mr. David Small.
Chairman. Expansion that was put on earlier to the report. Rehabilitation of boat 1 has been completed and 3 and 4 in progress. Is that the current information? You stated earlier that the port operates at maximum capacity. Yes?
No, I said that we were not yet at maximum capacity. We were in 2015. We were approaching maximum capacity. In other words, the estimated capacity is 250,000 TEUs, and in 2015, we achieved 221,000 TEUs.
What was the performance last year?
Last year was 168,000 TEUs.
What accounted for the decline?
Well, the decline, as mentioned before, was mainly as a result in the because of the prevailing economic climate. So we saw overall a 14% drop in domestic cargo. Both imports and export declined by 14%. And we saw approximately a 54% decline in transshipment cargo.
Upon the completion of this rehabilitation, or I should ask first, the expansion of port facilities that you speak about here, is that the construction of a new berth?
Will be extension of the existing berth, extension of our largest berth, which is berth 5.
And upon the completion of the rehabilitation and expansion, what would be the capacity of the port then?
We'd estimate that the capacity then would be approximately 400,000 TEUs.
Now, your major competition is the Port of Port of Spain?
Correct.
And the region?
In
terms of transshipment cargo?
I would say Barbados. Because we compete in a different space to countries like Bahamas, Jamaica, Dominican Republic. They are what you would consider major regional transshipment players, and the majority of the transshipment cargo that they handle are really destined for markets on the East Coast, USA. We compete in a totally different space as far as transshipment cargo goes, and we will more be competing, if you're talking about transshipment, for cargo that's going to the smaller islands, for example, to St. Lucia, to Guyana, to Suriname, to Antigua, to Barbados, and so on, and to a lesser extent to the countries of Latin America.
So, any additional, following expansion, any increase in your business can be directly tied in to a decrease in business at the Port of Port of Spain? Can I make that assumption?
If the expansion results in an increase in domestic cargo, more than likely it would be at the expense of the Port of Port of Spain. If it is an increase in transshipment cargo, it will probably be at the expense, to some extent, Port of Spain, and to some extent as well, some of the other regional port players in Latin America.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
Before Mr. Small comes on, Mr. Small, just allow me a few seconds. I wanted to ask the chairman or the president, on page 16 of your submission, where you delineated administrative expenses and what they call other operating expenses. You know when, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Attlee, as well as the President, you know when people owe money to an organization or company and they're bad paying because they're not meeting their commitments and they get a lot of space, they're still not paying. You know what ultimately happens? Bad debts. You know what bad debt means at the end of the day? The taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago have to bear the burden. So I am seeing on page 16, in 2014, bad debts amounting to $2.2 million. So I want to know if PLIPDECO had to write off $2.2 million in receivables that whoever owed us, the company and the taxpayers of this country, $2.2 million, they didn't pay. And after pleading with them over a period of time, they still didn't pay. At the end of the day, we say, look, we can't plead anymore. It is in our books. The best thing to do, bad debt, write off, 2.2. Is this $2,200 or is it 2.2 million? I'm not too sure. Maybe I'm wrong because I don't believe that we can just write off $2.2 million. So first of all, explain to us how this has arisen and give us a detailed breakdown of those organizations and individuals and companies that would have benefited from this, and whether it's still in operation or whether they've gone out of business. What has happened? I don't know. We need clarification on this matter. That's the first thing I want you to address before I ask Mr. Small to get into the picture. Then I saw something that is a bit worrying. I don't know if you have it there, but let me see if I get it. Yes. It is again on the trade and on the receivable, other receivable. I see other receivables consist of a number of things, but the one that struck me was staff loans, recoverable. And I want to know if PLIPDECO is a bank or PLIPDECO is a credit union. So please explain to this committee what you mean by staff loans recoverable. And I do not know if that means outstanding monies that you would have loaned to members of staff and they have not paid back. Could you tell this committee how many workers are involved or staff members? What is the value of the monies that were loaned to these staff? At what rate of interest? And could you tell us in this manual, this is a manual called the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. Where in this manual does PLIPDECO derive the power to lend monies to staff? I would like somebody to explain that to this committee, because this is alarming. I saw it, and I just want to get clarification, Mr. President, whether I'm reading right, whether I need new glasses, whether I'm interpreting this thing properly. I could be wrong, but please guide me. Please help me, both in terms of the bad debt, 2.2 million being written off, and this item called staff loans recoverable, 3%. Tell us what these things mean, please.
Okay. Committee members. When we looked at the financial statements, we made a provision for some long outstanding invoices. So what you see in the financial statement is actually a provision for bad debts. Those amounts we have determined more likely than not, it may be difficult to collect. Now, the corporation's policy is that all debts are collectible. In so much that as far as we stand now, that amount has gone up to 1.3 million. And then we have also initiated some action against the other long outstanding amounts. So it's not specific amounts that we have written off the books totally. We just created a provision, and we will be working towards clearing it off. Right?
So at this moment, we have moved from 2.2 million to 1.3 million. So we have 1.3 million outstanding.
Correct.
Okay. Right. Any time frame for collecting that 1.3, and if within that time frame you don't collect it, would you then be writing it off?
We haven't decided fully if we are going to actually write off the amounts, because the position right now is that we'll try as fast as possible to collect all.
Okay.
I would say another year and a half or so before we make a formal decision.
All right, thank you very much. And could you explain to us, clarify for us, guide us on this item called staff loans recoverable? I'm not too clear on it.
We have, within our approved human resource policy, a facility where we offer to employees who are studying as a loan equivalent to 1 month of their salary repayable over 1 year to facilitate the study of the employee. So that is really what the staff loan is about. There's another instance where we can give the employee up to 1 month's salary in advance for any personal issues that they have in accordance with the agreement we have with the union. All those amounts are repayable over a 1 year period of time and are all collectible.
But may I be advised as to whether this is part, your human resource policy that you mentioned? It is laudable. But the question here is whether you are operating in breach of the state enterprises manual, or whether you have consulted with the Ministry of Finance and they have given you the all clear to approach that matter in the way that you have outlined, or whether this is a unilateral decision taken by the company to put into action a measure that may be laudable, because if somebody is studying and they want a loan to help them a month, you know, who can argue? That seems to be reasonable. But what I'm trying to ask really is, do you have the power, without the approval of the Ministry of Finance, in terms of policy, to effect that measure? I'm not too clear. And maybe the Ministry of Finance Investments Division can guide this committee. Can a company creatively, in its human resource policy, effect such a measure without approval from the Ministry of Finance? Do they have that power to do so?
From all records, without the permission of the Minister of Finance, no, they shouldn't.
All right, that's one. And maybe the President can tell us how many members of staff would have benefited from this program, first of all, and how long this program has been in existence, over what period of time?
I believe that program would have been in place for possibly over 20 years. As far as how many persons would benefit on an annual basis, I would probably estimate about 6 or 7 workers benefit on an annual basis.
You have any idea what is it? Do these loans attract an interest, some rate of interest, or is it just a flat? If you borrow $10,000, you just pay back $10,000.
No, there's no interest charge.
There's no interest charge.
But it is, as the Vice President said, it would be payable over a period of maximum of 1 year to reduce the exposure to the company.
Well, you have now been advised by the Ministry of Finance that that policy that you have been pursuing for 20 years is not a proper policy, and it does not have the agreement of the Ministry of Finance. And even though you are an independent company under the Companies Act, there is something called fiduciary duty, due diligence, the duty of care. These things are very serious. And more importantly, if you have a ministry that gives strategic direction in terms of policy, and you need to be au courant with that relationship between the Ministry of Finance, Transport, Works and Transport. It seems to me that you may have to revisit that approach that you have taken, as you have said, for 20 years. I will pause at this time and call on.
Piggyback a bit. Mr. President, is this arrangement part of the collective agreement with the union?
No, it wasn't.
It was available to all employees.
The reason I asked the question, Mr. Chairman, because if it's not part of the collective agreement with the union, but it has been in place for all these years, the question that may very well arise would revolve around legitimate expectations. So.
Question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very interesting session this has been so far. I have a question here, and I think Mr. Subaya may be the best person. I am looking at your statement of comprehensive income, and there's a number here that's described as unrealized fair value gains on investment properties. Now I understand what that is, and it's a non-cash. It's a non-cash, and that's the reason why I'm asking the question, because how it's structured here in your statement, it's an addition. It flows into your operating profit, but it's a non-cash transaction. So that because it's a non-cash transaction, for me, is this the proper placing for this number? Because if you remove this non-cash transaction, your operating profit in a couple of years might actually be almost nothing. It's a non-cash transaction on the statement, how it's structured here. So that is my concern. Is this the usual placement for this number? Because it's not a cash transaction, but at the end of it, you get your operating profit. So that, for me, perhaps I've been used to seeing different types of operating accounts, but operating profit tends to be the hard things with the company. Non-cash transactions come after. But I would be happy to be guided.
Okay, going again. Correct, it is a non-cash item. Is as a result of the changes in the value of the estate, as a result of changes in market value of the land, as well as the tenure of the leases. Because that's a part of the fundamental business of the corporation in terms of leasing of the lands, based on the accounting standards, is where it should be, as part of the operating profits. Now, that being said, that's just the format of the financial statements. But in terms of making operational decisions, payments for dividends, payments for bonuses, investment decisions, the company may or may not include that as part of an item in making those decisions.
Well, Mr. Subaya, you've gone to my next question. So that is what I would like to understand. Could you provide through you, Mr. Chair, when you're making the decisions on dividends and bonus payments and other things, this shouldn't be included in that calculation.
Correct.
So that is where I was exactly where I was going. I just wanted to get it clear in my mind. So I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm all right. I just wanted to hear it from you to make sure that we're on the same page. I have one last question, Mr. Chairman, if you permit me. Could you tell me whether the company has any litigation matters ongoing now, both in either in the civil courts or in the industrial courts?
We have 2 matters in industrial court and 3 matters in the high court.
How long have these matters been? Have they been recent matters or are they long outstanding?
Those will be old matters. And the most recent would have been about approximately 3 years ago, the most recent.
3 years old?
Yeah.
So this, let me be clear. Industrial court or high court?
Which one?
If I may,
Certainly.
at the industrial court, the 2 matters that we have there, in terms of the causes of action, they would have been matters that arose about probably 8 years ago. And yes, the minister allowed the matter to proceed. And they have been there, this is about the second year, and those matters should be heard shortly. That is at the industrial court. The ones at the high court have been there a while now, and not anything new. They have probably been in the system between probably 2-3 years about their all insured matters, because we do have insurance to deal with.
I am interested because if what you're saying is that you only have a couple of matters in
Just a couple.
in the industrial court, but these I suspect would have been employee issues.
Employee, yes.
So that if you have an employee issue going on for several years, wouldn't the legal fees have probably outstripped the amount of money that perhaps is being I am concerned. Let me share my concern. I am not enamored of a company that is owned or controlled by the state delaying fair treatment of a worker, and in the meantime, attorneys are making money, while the worker is left to figure out what is going on. So that is not something that I'm enamored of.
That is not.
If you permit me, my colleague, I think the question is, who represents the organization at the level of the industrial court, and who represents the organization at the level of the high court?
External attorneys are always retained.
You're on track.
Yes.
So that is just my concern, and it's a position that I take, that, and it's not only with other entities, that I do not think is an appropriate practice. I think that if a matter has been going on, as you say, for several years now, and it's supposed to come up this year.
If I may,
Yeah.
perhaps I did not make myself clear enough.
Yeah.
It is not that these matters were in the system for 8 years. It's like someone coming long after the fact, having left the organization 8 years ago, going before the minister, that is in the case of the matters at the industrial court, and then filing and indicating that there was a dispute back then. And the minister, yes, the minister gave leave. So that it is not that PLIPDECO would have been engaged in any particular dispute for that period, but that the person coming along after that time and obtained leave through the minister to bring the matter at the industrial court.
So I just want to be clear. So what you're saying is that you have no matters at the industrial court that are from an employee that has been going on for years?
None.
Okay, good.
No.
I just want to get that in the record.
Chairman, permit me, Ms. Dennis, are you saying that an employee would have demitted the organization 8 years ago, and in the year 2016 would have filed a trade dispute?
Yes, surprisingly.
The matter would have been forwarded to the Ministry of
Yes.
Labor and Small Enterprise
Yes.
Development.
And approved.
Was it sent at the personal level or via a trade union?
Via a trade union.
And the trade union would have requested an extension of time
Yes,
from
and was
the ministry?
granted.
I will speak to you off
Yes.
camera on that is.
Yes, that is surprisingly is what occurred.
Well, before we are now approaching 12:30, and we don't want to go beyond that time, but I just want to raise one final point. Mr. Chairman and Mr. President, I'm looking at your the profitability of PLIPDECO, and I'm seeing a declining trend. I have observed in 2013, your profit for the year was $174 million. In 2014, it was reduced to $115 million. And at the end of 2015, it has gone down to $83 million. So there is a declining trend in the profitability of PLIPDECO between the period 2013 to 2015. I think your administrative expenses and your operating costs play a very big role in this situation, along with the overall economic environment, as was mentioned earlier by your good self. But I advise you to watch this trend, maybe you might have an explanation
You would like my Vice President to provide some clarification
tell
on
us
those numbers with
what
respect to the fair
is
value
causing
gains as
this-
opposed. Sure.
this trend that we are seeing.
Well, we kind of spoke to this earlier when I was discussing with Mr. Small. That's really the impact of the fair value gains on the profitability of the company that causes it to go up and down. In 2013, it was 170 million. 2014 was 108 million dollars, and in 2015 it decreased to 71 million. If you take that element out of it, you'll actually see that in 2013 the profitability was 5 million, 2014 6.3, and 2015 we went up to 12.1 million dollars in profit before tax. So the actual operations of the business, excluding fair value gains, has been trending up for the last 3 years.
Mr. Atterley, Chairman, at this time, we'd like to ask you if you'd like to advise us on your thoughts on what we can do to assist you and PLIPDECO to improve its efficiency, its effectiveness, and its profitability in the coming period. You may not be able to provide all the answers today, all the recommendations or suggestions, but you can summarize and you can proceed to submit in writing your thoughts on how this Public Accounts Enterprises Committee can assist PLIPDECO as it embarks upon another leg of its long journey, as was identified earlier, 50 years of celebration, of operation, of existence, as of September of last year. So maybe you can give us an appreciation, very tight appreciation of what your thoughts would be on the way forward and how we can help and assist.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, today was one that has brought us even closer together in working to finding the answers to your questions and what have you. And we had an instance earlier today where Mr. Small and I had contact when the question of the 2 million bonus was paid. And he has great retainers, because when we were at the Public Accounts Committee, Joint Select Committee, it was then 12 million. So we shared that because he remembered, and we are proud to know that coming here and going there to Joint Select, only good comes out of these meetings, sir. So we were able to bring our bonuses down to 2 million and link it to profitability. I trust that going forward, this committee, and I saw a trend today because you asked us to send in writing, additional information. I would hope, sir, that that door remains open and that we can come back to you for issues as they come forward. So, sir, I would hope that our answers provided have found acceptance with the members of the committee, and we remain ready to provide those written responses that for additional queries and clarifications which you require. And so I would like to say here that we are happy. We leave here richer, having had this interaction with the committee, and thank you very much.
Well, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, we would like to also record our appreciation and congratulations at the same time to PLIPDECO, the officials from the Ministry of Works and Transport and the Investments Division for coming and for accepting our invitation and being very forthright in terms of our exchanges, because at the end of the exercise, the objective is to help PLIPDECO improve its efficiency, its operations, its economy, and its profitability at the end of the exercise. So we are very happy that you were able to come. We look forward to inviting you again. So we put you on notice. If the committee desires to have you come back for further clarification, we will invite you. If we believe that through our questions we submit to you and the responses that we have received subsequently would be adequate, then we may decide otherwise. But we always put our colleagues on notice that we may invite you back again. So on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, we'd like to thank again the members of the Investments Division, Ministry of Finance, members and officials from the Ministry of Works and Transport, and of course, PLIPDECO official headed by the distinguished chairman, Mr. Ian Atherley. We also like to extend our appreciation to members of the media for covering the event, and of course, members of the public who would have followed our proceedings. This meeting is now suspended, and once again, we thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll have to postpone.